Okay, so today we're going to create a watercolor piece. So I'm starting with a wet on wet technique. So I'm wetting down my paper and then I'm going to grab some blue. So I'm mixing up a couple different shades of blue and I'm just going to let that bleed into the paper so you can see it start to run. So I think that makes a really fun, neat technique. I've painted a little bit along the bottom. That is going to be the grass line. Now I'm taking in a paper towel and I'm removing some of what I just put down to create some kind of abstract looking clouds. So now I'm taking a wet brush with no paint on it and I'm just kind of blending that together. So I'm wiggling it around on some of those harsh lines and letting the paint blend together as well as lifting back up some of that paint. So now I'm going back in with more blue to kind of define some of those areas and make it look more dramatic and put in a little more blue. Okay, now I'm starting in with the grass. So I'm going in with a goldish color. So I mixed yellow with a little tiny bit of green in there to get that kind of yellow-green goldish tone. I also have a little bit of brown in there so that the yellow is not too bright. And then I'm going in with some blue mixed in with my green toward the bottom. So it's going lighter to darker. So there's some of my darker green I've mixed with blue right there. And now what I'm going to start doing is putting in some of the grass-like texture. So I've switched my lines from going across horizontally to now going up and down vertically. And I'm putting in some of those grassy areas at the bottom. And now I'm going into the middle ground that I'm putting in some more texture and grassy area with the lighter colors, doing some of those vertical lines up and down. And I just keep kind of adding. Now, water control is really important here. Right now I'm using a fairly dry brush, so just a little bit of water and mainly paint so that it doesn't run. So I'm using a wet paint on dry paper technique. So now I'm going to start painting in the tree, which is going to be the focal point. And again, this is a wet on dry technique. So I'm using wet paint on dry paper to create a very detailed look. So for example, the background was really wet. That's wet on wet. Right now I'm doing wet on dry, which is going to give me a lot more texture and a lot more clarity so that the watercolor paint does not run or bleed. So I'm going to keep on working here onto my tree. Now, as I'm painting my tree, you'll see I'm starting out larger at the trunk and I'm getting thinner as we go out. I've also broken an edge off of the edge of the paper, which makes it look more interesting. So I'm just continuing to draw those lines. I'm making them get thinner as we go out and thicker toward the base. And I'm just taking my time. I'm also making sure I don't have any really straight lines because trees don't have really straight lines. They have a little bit of natural curve in them and a little bit of natural bend. So I'm making sure I put that in the tree. For my paint color, I've mixed brown with a little bit of black as well. And then I just added in a couple of birds. And then I'm just going to go back in and add a little bit more texture across the top so it has a little bit more grassy texture popping up along that horizon line to give it just a little bit more drama.